Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I'm your host, Nick Schutt. Happy to have my friends Bruce Olson and Josh Paul with me here today. Gentlemen, how are you?
Really good. Thanks for having us.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. If Josh, Bruce, if you don't mind, would you tell everybody a little bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, and kind of how you got here and what we're talking about today?
Sure, absolutely. So, Bruce Olson, here at Colvin Run, I'm the Vice President of Growth and wow, I just forgot what my new title was. Just got promoted. Growth
Congratulations on the promotion.
Operations. Thank you. So, adding that operations title before as the Director of Growth. So, basically, primarily focused on growing the business. So, the sales side of it. However, as a small business, wear a lot of hats. So, I do HR, and I've also been the principal investigator on numerous SBIRs. So, we can talk more about what those are later. And before that, I was at a startup called shift.org, where I led a program called Defense Ventures Program. Okay. Worked on Defense Ventures Program. I started another side project of that called uh, wow, I just forgot. Anyway, it was like Defense Ventures Program light. Instead of people having to leave and go TDY from the military to do it, they got to do it in their own base. So what it did is we implanted people from the military active duty with venture capital companies or small startups, and it helped them kind of see what that looked like to work on the other side in something small, fast, light, where you can actually move and make decisions and not be tied down in the bureaucracy like you do in the military. It
hmm
was a very, very cool project. If you talk to anyone that's been in DVP, they'll tell you how much they liked it. Still kind of a cool community going on there. Unfortunately, Shift went out of business about a year and a half ago. So I was laid off from that to end up here at Colvin Run. And then prior to that, I did 20 years in the Air Force where I did myriad of jobs, starting with aircraft maintenance, logistics, and then ended up being a what they call a first sergeant. So kind of like the HR arm of that, but basically responsible for the morale and welfare of the people under me. So always liked technology. Had a computer in my house since I was little. So um, my dad was a computer programmer. Just so I'm not on the tech side. I am not a developer, but very involved in all the goings on. Love the AI wave. Been on it since I don't know what you want to call the beginning. We can talk about that, but since it's gotten popular, been on board. So that's
Fantastic.
that's where I'm at here. And then I brought Josh on. Great addition to the team. Thanks for stepping up, Josh. And I'm going to let you give your intro now.
All right. Thanks so much, Bruce. Yeah. So Josh Paul joined Colvin Run about 8 months ago, straight out of the Air Force. So it was a fantastic decision. So going back, joined the Air Force at 18. I was actually working in the medical field. Kind of conquered that and thought I needed a new challenge. So I became a unit training manager and quickly realized that spreadsheets and training processes were sort of not as efficient as they should be. So created a few tools within that career field to go ahead and like expedite and automate people's training records.
hmm
Got picked up to work at North Spark Defense Lab at Grand Forks Air Force Base. So they're an innovation cell. One of the few like lab titles because we also had, partnerships with NG and University of North Dakota. And
hmm
then did a small stint as an AFWorks fellow. So worked as a TPM for AFWorks, kind of integrating technology, and through all of that, met Bruce and saw some of the technology that Colvin Run was producing and working on. I thought it was fascinating, and the stars aligned to where my contract was coming up, and I was looking for a new opportunity, and yeah, so joined the Colvin Run team. Besides that, grad student at Purdue. And yeah, just super happy to be here.
In grad student in
Artificial intelligence.
there you go.
Fantastic. And I really appreciate it. Thank you both for your service. Thank you, for also for coming on and chatting with us today. I know one of the things that really interested me, Bruce, when we initially spoke, I think that was a little over a year ago now, was that you talked about Colvin Run, and building Colvin Run's BD processes as an AI native BD team, right? Can you like explain first your thought process behind doing that, and second, what does that actually mean?
Yeah. So thought process is that, I mean, again, jumping on board, right? Everyone's like, oh, AI is going to change the world. Like you can really accelerate your processes. And why wouldn't you, right? So if you have boilerplate, I mean, this is the most simple thing. You could do this before AI, right? But if you have boilerplate language you're going to use, or you want to adapt just ever so slightly, like, yeah, you could spend time manually doing it, or I could be like, here's the use case, adjust it for me.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just like the most basic version, right? But it's like learning how to do something or learning what something actually what a customer actually wants, right? Like the some of these solicitations are, 100 pages. It's like, okay, which parts of these are important to me? Which parts of these are can our business support? And if I can have something do that for me very rapidly, why would I not do that? So that was kind of impetus of it. But I'd already been using ChatGPT for a lot of things, or other AI tools, and so AI native, what does that mean, right? So I had done BD work before when I started at Shift, before I started working on the Defense Ventures program. When I did SkillBridge out of the Air Force, I actually did SaaS sales. So
Hmm.
cold calling people, I was writing emails, looking up people on LinkedIn, being that annoying guy that just, like, oh yeah, I'm going to connect with you. Oh, here comes the messages. He's selling
Hmm.
something. um, so AI native, again, if you look back and see what people mean by like digital native, right? Like if I show my daughter a phone with buttons, she's like, what's that, right? Like they've known smartphones their whole life. Like it's just something without, they've known the internet their whole life. They never didn't have it.
Hmm.
That's what Josh is with BD, right? Josh has never done traditional BD in any way without the assistance of AI. So to throw someone into that and then and we could talk about how the brain works and training if you want, but like it's like, okay, would it
Yeah,
be better to train them the
let's go.
traditional way and teach them all those things, or just say, look, here's the tool. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and use it? Just use the tool as effectively as possible from the get-go.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. How has that been for you, Josh? Never having known like traditional business development and what goes into that, has it been easy to learn? I mean, is it like an intuitive process using AI essentially natively as like your first tool?
I think for me, it's certainly been a transition. Fortunately, great team that's been very supportive. And then also, similar to Bruce, always kind of been fascinated by technology, and I was using ChatGPT and kind of other AI tools during my stint in the Air Force. So the transition really, I think, knowing how to use the tool was kind of the first bridge to cross.
Hmm.
Learning the terminology, learning the other side of the business, from the civilian side, that took a little bit, absolutely. But I wouldn't say it was a whirlwind. I could probably imagine though a world before, AI tools to where you really had to dig in and hone in those skills and sharpen the spear. So it's certainly been expedited. And I think that's one of the benefits of tools like, ChatGPT or Gemini or any other AI tooling.
Hmm. Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And how do you differ from a like a native process? I mean, from like a traditional process? How like do you just have, essentially in your process built in instead of doing like say a compliance check or going through and looking at a solicitation, whether, a source of saw, an RFI, RFP, RFQ, whatever, and like reading it, are you like using an AI tool to go ahead and help with that? Or are you just like uploading forecasts in like a spreadsheet? Forecasting your capability statement to one of these tools and then asking it to help figure out what opportunity, like, kind of how does it differ from the more manual traditional, like at a tactical level?
yeah, I was gonna say Josh isn't even gonna know because he hasn't seen that, right? Um, but to answer your question, right? Like again, so let's just talk about like capture process. Actually, let's talk about our processes in general, right? So we don't
Mhm.
do a ton of like traditional GovCon at
Right.
this. We're venturing out into that. Our primary business right now, we do have other contracts, is small business innovation research. So SIBR,
Hmm.
and yeah, and in that, again, looking across what they're actually asking for. So you can read that whole solicitation for one topic in about a minute and a half, right? So actually deciding what to go after on one topic, quick and easy traditionally anyway, right? But
Mhm.
when they started dropping like 80 topics at a time, and instead of doing it on like a 4-ish month cycle, now it's every month. Yeah, now it's like how much more cognitive load could you even give to that? Like you can't keep up with that with the team you had if that's what your only business model is. And we couldn't. So now it's like, okay, instead of just reading every single one of them, now we can. Yeah, you can upload all of them and go. We have uh, we have a GPT, custom GPT that's trained to all of our past performance. It
Mhm.
knows what all of our resumes of all the people on our team are. So it knows what their capabilities are, and it knows what our general company capabilities are. And it very quickly can delineate a lot of them. Like, oh, you want to sell something, you want to sell an F-150 is an example we use a lot, right? Like we don't sell hardware. We're not a dealer of any type, like we're not a value-added reseller. So anything that would like kind of fit that, like is immediately just it's done, right? So now we can come up with a quick, succinct list of ones that are going to meet the criteria that we could go after. And now we have a much smaller pool of things to actually manually parse through and decide how and why we'd go after that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I do similar things, right? Like, again, being in the small business world, whether it's, upload a solicitation, or upload a forecast, what have you, and kind of go through it. It's also, I like to use I like to, make sure I'm not missing any key phrases, make sure I'm not missing any key requirements also, because I'm not detail oriented. Like that's not my strong suit. You know what I mean? And so looking, as kind of, as kind of having that second set of eyes on it, but I also don't trust the eyes 100%, right? Just like I don't trust my eyes 100%. So kind of sitting in there and providing that same level of critical analysis to both, the output and to your own work product, I think is something that I'm working through now where, and like I see it whenever I see when people don't actually read the output of their, whether it's a post or whatever, and the post, a resume, a proposal, it doesn't matter, there's a whole bunch of them. I see all those outputs, right? And I like when you read them, and also if you're not, and I think interestingly, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that if you know how to prompt the generative AI agents, LLMs properly, it won't its result won't come back as something that is super formulaic that looks the same as everything else, right? Because I think that for those of us that are in this space, it's pretty easy to tell when somebody hasn't prompted something very well, right?
Yeah. Or again, so both ends of it, right? So you got your starting point of how well you prompt it, and then you have your output again, and how well you review it. And so you have people on both ends of the spectrum of like, it doesn't matter, it put it out, whatever, I'm going to use the tool the way it is, right? And of course they should pre-read it. And then you have people that are literally scared of it. Like, what if it does this? Well, we know it does that. We know it lies, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's literally programmed basically to kind of make us happy, right? Like if I tell it to make an argument for something, it's going to give me a really, really great argument for that. And then if
Mhm.
I ask it the converse, right, it's going to give me a really, really good argument against it. And literally, if you show both of those to different people, they could both just be swayed, like, oh yeah, I'm for it. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I'm against it. Um, but yeah, what it comes down to, I think, is knowing when that's important, right? So yeah, there's things that I spit out, like especially internally, and my team knows. They're like, thanks, Bruce, you copied out of ChatGPT. Yeah, well, they know, right? But they
Mhm.
don't care, right? But yes, on a response to a, you
Right.
know, you're putting forth work. We're gonna do this work for you, Air Force. Yeah, obviously, the most important thing to look for that's important, did it lie? It does lie, right? So going through there and being like, is it actually putting in there what I need it to and what I told it to versus just what it thinks I wanted to hear because that's what it thinks the Air Force would want to hear, right? That's
Mhm.
obviously step one, right? And that's another thing that not just we have an issue with, but again, like the people that are, I say scared of it, maybe they're not scared of it, but they're very, very risk averse, right? Well, what if it does this? Okay, well, you can what if things all day, but it's still a tool. At the end of the day, your human needs to verify it. It's not any different, than when, if you're an F-16 and you're gonna pull the button on a missile, right? Like a human is still in the loop to say, yes, I could do that. I mean, after that, I mean, computers are still controlling the missile and telling it where to go,
Mhm.
right? But ultimately, a human told it what to do. It's the same thing here, in my view.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I explain it to customers when they're worried about that, because OpenAI, Google, everyone's trying to put controls on it to make it better, but it's just not there yet.
Hmm.
So, but even when it is, right? Like, I get that in a military application, you still want the person in the loop, or you want the person to have the ultimate authority, and they should. And the same thing goes when we're writing a proposal, right? Like,
Hmm.
we're responsible to review it and make sure it's factually correct, and also make it not sound like a robot, because you don't want it to, right? Like, I want it to show this is what we are going to do for you.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. No, no, no. I'm with you. And like, have there been, but have there been examples where that you can think of where, it has lied or it's just been wrong and either you didn't catch it or you caught it and, and you had to, or have you actually questioned the system and made it rethink about it?
so when they joke about, I'll let Josh talk here in a minute too. Sorry, Josh, but when they joke about, like, when the AI overloads come, they're gonna look at my chat history. Oh, I'm dead, like, instantly, because I berate the thing, right? I'll be like, no, this is wrong. Why did you tell me this?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, blah blah. But yeah, I'll give you a really good example that I think we're still battling, right? So we have a tool that's supposed to use RAG function to, we have all of our, it's not the one we've been using, it's a different one, and it's
Hmm.
supposed to work. They've supposed to fixed it, and they haven't. I can't speak English right now. So we uploaded all the resumes to it, and we're like, "Hey, respond to this RFI." It spit it out for us, and it kept saying that our CEO had this, like, PhD in something from a school he never went to, and I'm like, "No, this didn't happen." It kept doing it, and it was weird though, because a lot of times they're inconsistent, and if you ask them, they're like, "Oh yeah, I made that up." No, this one was consistently saying he had this degree from this school, which wasn't his degree and wasn't where he went to school, and we're just like,
Hmm.
"What are you doing here?"
Interesting. Uh, did somebody else on the team have that degree from that school or
Mm-mm.
no? It just,
Oh, it said he's a doctor. I don't think we have any doctorates on our
yeah.
staff. So, what
Hmm.
about
Yeah.
you, Josh? What's your favorite lie it's told you?
Oh boy. Um, Vibe coding comes to mind, right? Like you're getting bad code. And then additionally, going back to school, you can always see when, somebody in a discussion question didn't do the reading and like it just regurgitates something completely random and it's just like, calls you the wrong name or it talks about a lesson that was last week and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, that this person either didn't prompt correctly or just didn't
Hmm.
didn't look into it. So yeah, I think there's a wide variety of, hallucination or like Bruce said, you still have to be involved. We're not
Hmm.
there yet to have a robot just give us the answers. So
Yeah. Not even remotely yet. So it's funny. I like to use it for uh write-ups when I'm either sending somebody over to a client or what have you, and I'll give it a job description and a resume and tell it to, give me like 6 bullets on this person and their background. And this one job we worked a couple of months back is one we needed a candidate with this very specific agency's experience. The candidate needed to work there. And like the write-up came out and said, yeah, they had 4 years at this. Agents never had worked there, not even once, right? And you go back to this, like, it's like, where did you get this from? And they just couldn't come up with it. And it's like, huh, well, but it also, I don't know, to me, that's also job security, right? It's like, we're not there yet. It's going to be a while before we get there. And, so, but, have there been opportunities from the AI and the BD perspective? Have there been opportunities that you guys decided to go after that you wouldn't have gone after otherwise, or opportunities you weren't tracking that you were able to find as a result of, being an AI native team?
Uh, you got any examples, Josh?
I'll let you go first. I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I'll say as an overarching example, yes, I don't have a specific example, but there's definitely times where, as a team, we would have been talking about something and been like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right. But you ask the AI, and again, it didn't lie, but it came up with a more creative way to be like connect two dots that we didn't see, and we're like, yeah, absolutely, we can. So, for instance, Josh is writing one right now. It's a training one, right? And on the surface, I go, okay, so I was a tech school instructor. I taught people how to work on C-17s. Josh was a training manager. We have someone else on our team that was in military training. Cool. Those seem to check our boxes. But if you really break down, we're like, but does that make us the experts? No. Still think we have some insights there. But when you break down what it's actually asking for, of course, the LLM saw it way more as a technology problem. And then, when you break that into what our past performance looks like, yeah, like it's like slam dunk. Why wouldn't you go after that?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that's a pretty like, broad example, but yeah, I think again that comes back to training, not training, but prompting it right. It has to know what you know how to do
Mm-hmm.
or capable of doing, and then not lie to you about it. But
Oh yeah, there's that part too.
definitely there has. I think we've probably gone after more because of that than I think a traditional sales team might have done.
Mm-hmm.
Also makes you faster, right? We input a, we uploaded 11 SIBRs last time, uh, proposals,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're on track. What are we doing this time, Josh? 10, 9 or 10?
10.
And that was last month, right? You say, is this every month now?
Yeah, I think it was end of January was that one. So there was a really, really big one that dropped in January, and then there was a small one. The So is it every month, Josh? I think there was a month we went and we actually didn't go after any. I think February,
Correct.
March ones.
Mm.
In March, when the end of March, when they were going to do it, the Air Force rescinded all of theirs.
That makes sense, considering where we are in the industry right now. You know, absolutely. It's, when you think as you look at your BD cycle though, what is AI? When you start thinking about BD, proposal management, capture, proposal coordination, pricing, um, what what does AI do well? What does it do poorly?
I think I'll I think I'll kind of echo what Bruce said earlier. So, um, like, kind of it's been established, I did not come up in the traditional BD sense.
Hmm.
But I do believe AI in general has a capacity to do 10 times your output. So if that's 10 times as a team, 10 times as an individual, maybe 100 times as a team, depending on how well you're using it. So you're able to, you know, conquer much more on a surface level, regardless of, writing proposals or looking at your pipeline or what aspect. I think the kind of downside and dangerous is, for folks, well, I'm going to pause there. One, if you're not using AI, you're competing against however many teams are. So you're
Hmm.
at a disadvantage there. And I think kind of to go back to the downside, if you are using AI, there is a cost and a time consumption of verifying that you minimize hallucinations, that, let's say you're going after cyber topic X, Y, and Z, and the output for some reason is ABC. Well, now you have to go back and redo all of that work. So there's absolutely a downside if you're not using, whatever tooling correctly. Bruce,
Yeah, I can see that. I think we've questioned that before, right? Like, I mean, if we had just done this manually the first time, would it have been faster?
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think so. I think we're faster at doing almost all of them. I mean, at this point, I don't have a choice. Like, if you look at my calendar today, I threw lunch in there just to make sure no one scheduled over it right before this, but otherwise it's completely booked the whole day.
Yep,
And it's like, when am I supposed to do this work? So it's like I have to do things faster.
I'm with you.
Um, but yeah, what is it? It's weird because what is it good at depends on, I think, what you're trying to do, and also depends on the tool, right? There are tools out there that are actually pretty dang good at being like, you ask it something inane off the wall and it goes, I don't know. So
Hmm.
it won't lie to you. And when it does give you information, it actually tells you where it got it. And it has really good guardrails on it. Doesn't mean it still won't lie. I love actually demoing those tools
Hmm.
and asking it something crazy. So we were building one for the Navy that was supposed to help with training as well, with developing scenarios. And it's supposed to be there to help develop these scenarios. Well, I'll ask it something really crazy, like, give me a great recipe for cookies or something. That's not that crazy, right? But it's outside the realm of what it should be giving you. And it does rag well. It's going to be like, nothing you've given me has given me a great cookie recipe. So try again.
Mhm.
But that's not going to be a great like thought experimenter type tool, right? Like, so then you have the opposite end of the spectrum where if you're in just, your standard chat GPT where it will lie to you, doesn't have as many guardrails, but you're just like, hey, I have this idea. What do you think about it? And then it just helps you like riff off of it over and over again. You know,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
that the one you want to use to help you write the specific thing or create a generation of a scenario? No, so it's just they're kind of growing at the same time. But
Mhm.
also, we've all seen, every time that one of the big ones comes out with something new, they get better and better on their own. So it's like how long until that can just do what these other niche tools are doing?
I feel like ChatGPT just had a big step back. I feel like the over personalization and the hyping people up and things was just like, I think that that was a step back. I've read that functionality is worse now than it was a couple of months ago because of some of the changes that they made. I know they had to roll back some changes. Um, so I feel like there are missteps and things like that. But like, yeah, like I was asking about, I wanted to modify a recipe I was making, right? And I was making pizza dough, and I wanted to modify it, add a little bit more semolina flour, do a couple other things, and I was like, yeah, but like, well, and I asked it a question, and it's like, oh my God, that's so insightful. I'm like, dude, I don't need your validation. You're a fucking machine, right? Like, right? Like, I don't need your validation. Pardon my language. And it's just like I don't know what you're trying to accomplish there. And like outside of making it more human or like again, I'm not sure, but I also haven't read too deeply into that beyond that.
So it's funny you say that because then they simultaneously are telling me like, you don't need to tell ChatGPT thank you because all you're doing is using a bunch of server space. It's just
Mhm.
using a bunch of compute that's using more energy that you don't have to. And yeah, I agree with you. Maybe not. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I haven't been writing as many proposals. But yeah, at some point I was just like, what have you done to it? You messed it up. It was great. Um, and now it's not. And it's just your workflow in a lot of ways too. Like you said, if you're used to prompting in a certain way and then they change it, now your certain prompt doesn't work. But I yell about the same things. Old man yells at clouds about like cell service even, right? I'm like, this phone used to work great 5 years ago. Now like they're so worried about the all these other features. Can I just have a phone where I talk to someone? Uh,
Literally. But also, like to your point earlier today, I was, going through I'd running payroll. I was going through my timekeeping system, right? And the timekeeping system itself was going so slowly. I ran like 5 speed tests and restarted my computer because it was just like, dude, it shouldn't take 3 minutes for you to tell me how many hours people worked like a couple weeks ago. Like that's not like, what are y'all doing? So I get where you're coming from. I'm with you. I'm
yeah.
definitely yelling at clouds a little bit, you know. Thing comes with the age, you know what I mean?
Uh, it
Um,
might. Josh actually turned me on to though. Like again, he's like, I don't even really use ChatGPT anymore. He's using Gemini mostly now. So I used it this weekend in just like my personal chats. Just bought an RV,
mhm,
so horse trailer with living quarters, same thing.
mhm,
And I was asking it questions about it, and then I went back to go later and talk to it more. And I'm like, "Where's my conversation?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I use Gemini." I
mhm.
threw it at ChatGPT, and it was actually really crazy how like the output was almost exactly the same. Like not word for word, but the structure of the answers it gave me was very similar. So I'm like, okay, but this is pretty mundane. It's just searching the internet, going
Mhm.
like, what things do I need when I first buy an RV? Of course, that list's going to be the same because it's going to find the same, you
Same
know,
sources.
sites and whatnot that it pulled it from. But what if you get into more deeper things? So
Mhm.
some things I'd like to talk to Josh about more, but I've only talked to him once since that conversation, and it's been on this chat. So, uh, what do you think it does better, Josh?
So, the big three, Claude, uh, ChatGPT, Gemini. I personally switched to Gemini because ChatGPT's output was throwing me emojis every line. And even if I prompted it, still throwing me emojis. And I just couldn't really deal with some of the, I don't know. features, I guess. So I switched to Gemini using 2.5 Pro. Output on everything from code to I just purchased a home and I have zero idea what I'm doing. So
Hmm.
I'm able to, I do have a Pixel. I'm team Android. So I have Gemini on my phone as well, able to take pictures, say, hey, how do I fix this or what bug is this or what have you. I've just noticed just for my own personal kind of personal and professional workflow, it just seems to work better. Also, in my personal life, big Google guy, so Google Workspace, the agentic, Google Workspace implementation. It just seems to be more of a centralized, coherent use of AI that I feel kind of actually provides value compared to kind of ChatGPT seems a little bit separate. They're adding features. I think I just saw the other day they added, some sort of GitHub implementation and things like that, but it's a little bit slower to roll out.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the big things I've noticed. I love Claude, but every 3 hours I'm maxing it out, and then I have to wait. So while the output's great, it just doesn't really work for, you know, I guess using AI in both my personal and professional life.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, Team Gemini for now until, something else releases.
Josh also works with Google a lot. Google's one of our partners. He's constantly, uh, writing proposals where he's talking to their teams, their BD teams,
Hmm.
and it's actually kind of cool because instead of just being like, "Hey, Air Force, look at this cool thing," and we're just selling it to you, he's using a lot of those tools. So it's actually helpful for him, I think, not just because it works better for his workflow, but he's actually interviewing these tools, in his use case, so that he's talking about them way more,
Yeah,
educated on them.
absolutely. I'll have to go back and check Gemini out. I haven't used it in a while. Uh, because you get caught in one thing, but I'll check. I'll look at that. One of like we were talking about guardrails around AI. One of the really interesting things that I saw and then went and did myself was when DeepSeek was coming out. Like DeepSeek came out in what was that, January, February-ish time frame. Um, and if you went and asked DeepSeek about like Tiananmen Square and whether Hong Kong is part of China, some other things, right? It was really fascinating. He would actually write out an answer for you based on source data. And then after the answer was completed, it would like replace it instantly with, oh no, 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 no. This is not. And when you started questioning it about it, it's built because this is the Chinese policy, and it was really really interesting. And I don't know, I find it fascinating how we're able to watch them figure censorship out in real time, right?
It's pretty crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't. I haven't played with it. Again, we both have clearances, our whole
Oh,
team, so
I
we're just
understand.
not touching it.
Mhm.
Um, actually, I did have something to add to your previous point, though, right? Like what's in your workflow. That's actually all depending on what you're doing and how important the specific output is. That's almost just as important, right? So we've tried a lot of tools, and for me, I usually just keep coming back to ChatGPT. And why? Because I'm just so used to that in my workflow. So I actually um, decided, since we wanted to look at some different models, I'm like, well, where can we get access to all of them? Well, Josh will tell you, Vertex AI. And he pushes that a lot. So yes, we could build our own tool using Vertex where we'd have access to lots of different models, right? So if you
Mhm.
wanted to use Gemini and then switch over to Chat, OpenAI, whatever, the list is huge, and you can use any of those different models within the same tool without having to go subscribe to each one.
That's pretty.
Um, yeah, so that'd be cool to do eventually, is just build our own, but we haven't built that yet. So who has that functionality otherwise right now is what's the what's the other one, Josh, that we tried that the military has access to?
Ask Sage.
Ask Sage. So we went ahead and tried that, right? And again, so you have access to all these different models, oddly enough, including DeepSeek,
Hmm.
not hack-enabled version.
Hmm.
Did did you have access to those? Yeah. So if I needed something from a specific model, could I get to it? Yep. But was it easy and intuitive, and did it work for me? Not at all. Like I was just like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? Like if I need Claude, I'll go to Claude. Uh, Otherwise, for most of my tasks I'm doing, it's just way better and faster for me to
Yeah.
just use what I used to.
Yeah, no, it's actually funny you say that. I have reached out to the president of Ask Sage and asked him to be on Robots and Red Tape. I've been going back and forth with him, I think, a couple months ago. Thank you for reminding me. I owe
Yeah,
him a
no
follow
problem. Yeah,
up.
I both talked to him a couple times, more Air Force related things, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And then talking also about some of the projects you guys are working on. I know that you, Josh, have a big project you're working on around ATOs, Authority to Operate. Can you explain what an ATO actually is to folks? And just, let's start there.
Yeah, so authority to operate, sort of I don't want to say a legacy process, but every piece of software or hardware that's in a touch a DoD network or secure network, NIPR, SIPR, JWICs, has to go through this process to essentially, get approval and for the AO to accept risk. So, Bruce was speaking earlier about, some folks being risk averse and there's a lot of guidance on the ATO process. There's a lot of NIST, publications, but ultimately, how much risk are you going to accept? And to document that potential risk is a very, labor intensive and time intensive process, filled with, spreadsheets and early 2000s slash 1990s era tools, that hasn't hasn't really seen any innovation until recently. There's been a lot of innovation, shifting to a continuous ATO process. uh, I'm absolutely passionate about this topic just because of my active duty days of trying to get software fielded and to help folks out and even funding things myself as a E5,
Hmm.
to get things moving. um, so yeah, absolutely thrilled to be working on that for the Space Force.
Yeah, so you're working with Space Force to try to use AI to speed that process up. Is that correct?
So, AI is something that we're looking at potentially integrating. Right now, we're doing a lot of automation and sort of centralizing um, a solution.
Hmm.
So, we're shifting from static, like a point in time eval, to continuous, and we're also taking, a process that's taking them 20 to 30 hours per week of manually reviewing multiple spreadsheets, and we're automating all of that. Um, So, the fact that we're having cybersecurity professionals spend upwards of 30 hours per week reviewing controls
Hmm.
is absolutely necessary. We got to make sure that our guardians and other, DoD members have safe, secure software. Uh, but at the same time, by the time something gets through the ATO process and gets fielded, it's probably not what they need anymore. And
Hmm.
that's something we're trying to solve, especially, as
Yeah,
we're getting to near peer times and things like that.
absolutely. What is the process now? So say we'll say robots at red tape has whatever, it doesn't matter. A piece of software that DoD desperately needs to address a gap in DoD's tech, in their tech stack. Um, what does that process look like now? How do I, and where are the inefficiencies? Well, what does it actually look like?
Well, there's a variety of, tooling that you can use now to sort of upload your artifacts, upload your SBOMs, upload um, a variety of different scans and kind of go through from the ISM upwards to the AO to say, hey, here's an acceptable amount of risk. There's a limited number of vulnerabilities, things of that nature to say, and then the AO can say, okay, this is in accordance with our policy, and we're going to accept the risk because you have a limited number of vulnerabilities, or we know that this is absolutely needed, or hey, got to go back to the drawing board, redevelop a few things, re-engineer. When I was active duty, we had a situation where there was something was enabled within our pipeline that we didn't know. It was an open source tool
Hmm.
that ended up shutting down the entire pipeline because there was a vulnerability. So I had to go back all the way to the drawing board, and it was a huge deal. So now, we're looking. Not only is it inefficient in a sense of getting the paperwork and documentation together, also, typically it's longer to actually see if there's like a real-time threat or a critical threat in that field. So not only are we kind of moving the process from start to finish, but that continuous part, we're actually, real-time monitoring and making sure that, bad guys or software isn't up to date or anything
Hmm.
like that.
Okay. No, and how long does this process take now? Just on average, right?
Bruce, I'm gonna pass it to you. I feel like you're silent.
Yeah, well, the answer per usual is depends, right? It depends on how big it is and what it's touching. Um, what it really comes down to is the process is the process, and what you have to look at is dependent upon. So there's different types of RMFs that you can use, right? And then it depends on which one that actual uh, agency or unit is using. And then also, ultimately, the AO is the one accepting responsibility. So, yes, there are some things there that are like, this is flagged, it's definite no, you can't connect. But there's also things where it's like, this is a risk. And if that AO wants that software bad enough, they can accept that risk and just say, yep, we're doing it anyway. I don't know how much autonomy they actually have on that on everything, but I'm sure it's more than you would ever see because most of them aren't going to actually do that. They're not,
Yeah.
why would they accept risk on something when, they just don't, right? Most military leaders, from what I've seen, and I don't want to paint a broad brush here, the ones I've worked with, specifically my commanders, were really great about being like, I'm cool with this because I can see what the up or down is and let's do it. But when it comes to stuff like this, like a large piece of software that's going to affect like, an entire space launch,
Mhm.
yeah, why would you do that, right? And I can understand what their view on that of, but why wouldn't you if it depending on what it is? Because China's doing it again, like Josh said, super fast, right? Do you think I don't know what they have in place? I haven't researched it, but we do know, you can go read about it that they do field things much more quickly than we do, uh, both hardware and software, right? Their iteration cycle is much quicker.
Mhm.
So again, all this ties into making that faster to make us get to this quicker. But to so long answer to your question is it just depends. But yeah, upwards of a year on certain things, depending
Okay.
on
So
what they're
like
looking
if I had if say for instance robots and red tape had a a replacement for Microsoft Word that was just so good that the government needed decided to break their contracts with Microsoft to get this new version of Word, call it sentence, whatever, into their environment. I mean, we're talking like at least a year of them of just going back and forth,
for.
at least.
I mean, if you're talking something like that, that's beyond enterprise. That's like enterprise. Like, are you talking DoD wide or even government wide? I
Hmm.
don't. I actually am not even positive that like, does the Air Force have to give their own ATO, and then the Navy, the space? That I don't know on that, but I mean, that's another issue you run into, right? So if we're just going to say point blank deploying it on everything, I don't know who has that authority. But when you look at it from a DoD perspective, that's another problem you have. If robots and red tape wanted to sell Air Force sentence, they need to give them, shoot, actually, you have to go lower than that even, right?
So every office that.
Even subunits. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Because we're dealing with that right now, Josh. So I don't, I haven't checked the pulse on this, but when we started this process,
Mhm.
the commercial so what we're building is on top of a commercial solution. So, and I'd actually like to talk about that a little bit more later about being agnostic to different tools. But
Please.
that commercial solution already had an ATO with the Air Force. And then if we had gotten a reciprocal ATO to the Space Force, we would have been the first reciprocal ATO given to the Space Force from the from the Air Force. That's probably already happened now because it's taken so long. But that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, if you look at even that, they're both Department of the Air Force, but this unit had it already, and this unit still has not accepted the risk that this one did based upon their homework, even though the military said to do that. The DoD said, hey, if they've done their homework and they say it's good, you need to start doing it more to make it faster because this process takes so long. And they're still not even doing that necessarily, which I get it. They're doing their homework. Um, but yeah, so look at that. That's just within that. Imagine, I mean, there's so many different units within the Navy. Each one of those might be like, nope, we're doing our own ATO.
Mhm.
That being
So,
said, you as robots in red tape, let's say you navigate the Air Force and figure out how to get ATO for them. And then now you go to the Navy, it might be different.
Mm. So you might have to rewrite the actual program or change
Not
some
rewrite, but I have to
change your
do
ATO
different types of
process.
scans. You might change certain things. Yeah.
Hmm. That's crazy. So there just is no centralized way that this gets approved at this time.
There are some like kind of fast tracks, but it depends. It's also pay to play. Um, there's FedRAMP, right? So if you have FedRAMP, that which is its own type of ATO, that's
Hmm.
what a lot of commercial software licensors are going to use because it is a pseudo centralized version of being able to do it. Um, that being said, pretty sure our CSO that we're offering to the Space Force has FedRAMP, and we the Space Force is not accepting that, right? They have their
Hmm.
own RMF they use. Yeah. Anyway, that being said, what you have to do ultimately, even if you're doing continuous, you have to look at all these things you say you're going to look at, and that's taking a lot of time right now. So, how do we make that take less time? And that's what Josh is working on pretty much every day, other than when I have him writing SBIR proposals.
Hmm. Absolutely. How listen, full transparency, I've never prepared I've never needed to get an ATO. I'm pretty naive on this whole process. Is it just a lot of like a lot of paperwork and a lot of boxes you need to check and a lot of submissions to people that may or may not read them in their entirety and then ask you for things that were already in the submission and extend the process by weeks and weeks over things. So is it like is because I've been through that level of bureaucracy before, just not, you know, just with different levels of government for different reasons.
You've seen it closer, Josh, if you want to give your input, and then I'll give my, like, I don't know, what I think is the higher level version.
Yeah, I mean, let's say you have the world's greatest, Microsoft Word competitor, right? Gonna save whatever customer X amount of dollars or time. Even though it could be the world's greatest platform, you still have to categorize, you got to select the controls, you got to implement the controls, and as you're going through each step, there's documentation that you have to provide for each step. But you're not doing necessarily the one, robots and red tape is not the one processing that paperwork. You're not looking at things like system security plan. You, as robots and red tape, maybe the world's greatest Microsoft Word, and you want to field it, you want to get it out there. So that's kind of the hard part, working with whatever agency or government customer to say, hey, we have the world's greatest thing. We'll give you whatever you need. We'll give you the SBOM. We'll give you, the CVEs. We'll give you whatever you need. Still has to get processed. Still has to go through sort of the bureaucratic processes. Um, and kind of like Bruce said, once it gets to the AO, it's up to their decision with that stack of paperwork or PDFs or whatever other documentation. So um, yeah, I think that's the tough part, right? Especially in the realm of innovation, in the realm of R&D, you can build the world's greatest tool, but you have to be able to get it, fielded across that valley of death, or else it's just a really shiny pet rock.
I mean, and let's be honest, how often is it the best tool that wins the contract, right? I mean, it's also based on cost, right? But what Josh is saying, right? It is bureaucracy is the key term here. Um, just because you have all your ducks in a row, there's also a certain way that that unit says you have to do this. Not you, the maker of the software, but the people that are helping you get the ATO, all those people, there's all these different levels of review. Like they're just like, hey, how do you send this? And I got a lot of times it's just literally an email still where it's like, okay, we could put this in some sort of central repository where people can go and do their reviews there, but it's just not there yet. It's still very, very manual process. And even if someone comes up with a better way, which people have, right? And this happens, Josh has seen it a lot. Uh, I know a lot of people have done this, and I've seen it happen in units where they're like, hey, I came up with this cool tool I built, like homegrown type
Hmm.
tool. And it works, but it only works as long as that person's there because they're the person maintaining said tool, even if it's just basic automation within like a SharePoint or something, right? And then when they leave, if it breaks down, someone else either doesn't have the expertise to fix it or they just don't care, and then it just reverts to what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the tale as old as time in the military for a lot of people.
Hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so, obviously with the is the goal to essentially have AI go through all of it and make a recommendation of whether or not or identify the risks and provide like a high level risks of, hey, here are the areas you really need to look at. Like, what's the goal of this?
Yes, and like Josh was saying, like they're just now working on integrating the AI part. So what that end goal looks like, I mean, we're still like we're at walk.
Mm.
I think we're past crawl, but we're at walk. So I'll let you tell me your thoughts, Josh.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, right, building a unicorn, if you had some sort of agentic AI that could run through this process in rapid speed, that is the goal, and I absolutely think we'll get there. The issue is that, if you're using new tooling, if you're using something like, LangChain or Crew AI, well, now that has to go through the process.
Hmm.
So it's sort of a chicken and egg situation where we can build, an agentic AI, continuous ATO, software. We have to get it fielded. And maybe agentic AI is, not the only solution, right? Integrating other, language models,
Hmm.
um, or something like that. But again, it's getting it across the finish line, getting it through the ATO. So it's been a very rewarding and interesting, uh, you know, solution to work on because versus some of our other projects or, other projects in the ecosystem, this is a project to get the ATOs moving faster that, needs to be ATO'd versus a project that would just go through the process.
Hmm.
So there's that extra layer of challenge, but built kind of day zero, you know, zero trust cybersecurity in mind. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's all. Do you think agentic AI will be obsolete by the time we get an ATO to use it to provide other ATOs?
No, so as Bruce mentioned earlier, we are Google partners. A few of the team members, including our CEO, went to Google Next, and agentic AI this year was all the rage. I absolutely think it's probably going to only increase over the next few years. So I'm hopeful that we'll get there. Looking to the future, what could come after agentic AI, I think is kind of, in the clouds right now. Only one can imagine. But I think for now, it's probably the best bet.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, blockchain was at one point too. That's all I'm saying. Like it was the thing, and now it's not the thing so much, right? So I find, it's just fascinating to sit and think about how these things are going to continue to develop. I think you're right though. I think there's too much. I think about it like largely like what's been happening in factories over the last 100 years, right? 150 years, really through the tail end of the Industrial Revolution, or the Industrial Revolution through now, where you start looking at using machines to automate away things that people were doing, right? Now, yeah, as a business owner, if I'm building a factory to say build cars, right? My fixed cost is going to be higher, right? So you think about like my machines, the machinery to actually go out and do a lot of like the riveting or machining of tooling of all these parts is going to be higher because we're going to be using that, but it's going to be in lieu of the variable cost, which is people, right? And your overall labor. Um, so I think it has too much potential to save businesses money to go anywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. And on that topic, something that I've been thinking of is, kind of like you said, right? Technology replacing humans in some capacity. I think we're moving towards sort of this next forward step of us actually interacting with technology less and technology doing more. So if you think about a year ago, or 2 years ago, whenever ChatGPT really started taking off, uh, I personally did not mind having a full conversation with it, prompting. Uh, Fast forward to today, I just want it to output. I don't want a mile long prompt. So sometimes, Bruce is kind of introduced me to this. He's an expert, but he uses something called Whisper, or he'll, talk into a microphone kind of to speed up the process. So he's reducing it, the amount he has to type, right? What's the next evolution of that, that we even interact with technology less? I think that is probably where we go within the next, 10 to 20 years. Um, us dealing with technology less and technology providing more of an output.
That's the issue I have with my son too. Like he doesn't know how to type. I'm like, you're on the computer all the time. How do you not know how to type? But it's like, yeah, if you can just talk to it, then how much longer do you need to know how to type? I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, typing is an extension of typewriters, right? Which is why it's called typing. Which is, let's be clear. Let's be clear. That's old technology, right? At one point, it was the cutting edge stuff. I always think like the QWERTY keyboard and everything. All that's an extension of, it's not the most efficient place to have all these buttons, but you have them there because yeah, you needed to have them spaced out properly so that when you hit the button, like the internal typing mechanisms wouldn't hit each other. I don't. That's about the extent of it as what I know about it. But I think it's I don't know. I find the way legacy technology continues to influence our current technology and cutting edge technology fascinating, right? It's just fascinating. Like you don't, like there's a reason that the play button still looks the way it does, right? And there's the skip and the fast forward and the read. Like we don't fast forward or rewind anything anymore, And Josh, you might not remember, but Bruce, you'll remember Be Kind, Rewind,
Yep.
you know? It's yeah, not it's just super interesting.
Yeah,
So
even the save button is a floppy disk, right? But no one really knows what that is anymore.
I
So
don't even have a spot for CDs on my computer. I need to buy an external CD drive if I want to.
thank goodness. I actually couldn't wait for physical media to die. Like quite a long time ago. Like when I envisioned what streaming could be back when we were still like, you know, pirating stuff, downloading off Napster or whatever. I'm like, what if my phone just did this automatically? Well, I probably said whatever CD player or whatever, but
Hmm. Yeah.
we are, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so I don't store hardly anything on my phone other than what I want to be able to listen to on the plane if I don't get Wi-Fi.
That's really it, right? Like, and then you get on a plane, you realize you forgot to download something. And it's like, well, man, it's gonna be a long flight.
That's why if you have YouTube, Plus or whatever, it has an auto download part. So you just go to your auto download. It knows what you kind of like to watch. There's at least something there.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I actually just started playing with the YouTube Premium stuff because I don't want my daughter to watch YouTube commercials if she's ever watching something on YouTube. So
They're annoying.
yeah, and I also don't. A friend of mine was telling me a couple years ago his like 10-year-old daughter came to him and asked him if she was depressed because she said that the YouTube ads kept playing depression videos and therapy videos, and she asked if she could get into therapy. It's like, that's not what I need. That's not that's just a hard pass for me. That's a hard pass for me. Um,
Yeah. That brings up a really crazy, in this realm of things, right? Like you've seen that there's like a patent for them to be like control your brain while you're sleeping from your phone so that they can just play ads while you're asleep. Like, have we gone too far? But it's like, like
is there it's actually a like there that's actually a patent?
I,
I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's a patent is something they're looking into for sure. I've read a couple different articles about it, but
Hmm.
if you look into that type of stuff, yeah, I mean, good point, right? Yeah, what are you being influenced by? It's funny because I figured it was the algorithm influencing you, but I mean, we're talking the ads. That's like even a step down. Like, wow, like,
Well, yeah, but also the algorithm is determining what ads to serve you,
yeah,
right? I know because I do Google advertising on the other side for one of my businesses, right? And like you can serve to specific ages and genders and what have you, and you can segment it up, and then you can geofence all the ads so that they're only, being served in very minute, small areas, things like that. It's just like and that's also running on old technology, right? There I often worry about, you think about like the next step of it, Josh, to your, with you, and Google's been following all of us around the internet for 25 years, right? But you're interacting with them with Gemini, all of that interaction, and um it's not just like a Google search. It's I'm asking for this thing, I'm asking for that thing. You're getting these full long texts and interactions, and it's tracking everywhere, which is why you can sign into websites with Google. Um, like I worry about how is that additional contextual information that we give to these companies that have these LLMs, how is that information going to be used? Um, that's something I think about and I worry about. Then I also start worrying about thinking about like heads, like, if you have like VR goggles, right? How are they going to be able to, because I'm sure you guys know when you're using a VR goggles, right? Anything you're not directly focused on blurs out in the background. It started because they were saving compute, right? And they didn't want to have to render the entire screen at such a high level high level. But then that's also getting you this huge, that gives them a lot more data on you and understand what attracts your attention, what holds your attention. And then it's just like, obviously they're going to want to figure out how to like hack people's brains, which I think they already have with social media, but still like there's a side to all of this that is greatly worrying.
Yeah, I will. This is not my own thought. I heard this on a podcast, but I mean, to your point, right? Like, if AI is able to have a conversation with you and say 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, convert someone to like, you know, its side of the argument, right? If you, let's say you're using that for advertising, let's say like 97% of the time, AI can get someone to buy, right? Like, that's pretty close to mind control, right? 97% of the time, you're controlling what their thought is going to be, right? Or the narrative at least.
Hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. So, so that was a bit of a tangent, but super interesting stuff. And Bruce, I know when we last spoke, you mentioned something of like working on a project relating to hypersonic missiles, which is super cool. Do you mind tell us a little bit about that?
I Yes, and it's actually not under contract yet, so we have one supposedly, but it's not under contract. So it is, but I will tell you, so what it actually has to do with is, yeah, actually they don't even want it to be classified. So yeah, I was thinking about. Anyway, it's alternate position navigation and timing. So it's like, how do we track where it's at or where it's going without GPS, basically.
And
Uh,
that's important because hypersonic is faster than GPS can track.
Uh, I actually don't even know if I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how fast GPS can work. It's more, what if we don't have GPS? What if the first volley of other people's hypersonics go up and shoot down all our GPS satellites or jam them all?
Hmm.
Just be able to position our things, right? So it's actually it's huge area of research, and there's multiple offices in it across lots of different agencies, right? So but that's why it has its own acronym, alternate PNT, just because like what else are we going to do besides that? Yeah, we rely upon it a lot, but we've also been doing a lot of exercises and seeing where it doesn't work. Um, why? Because the Chinese can shoot down our satellites now, so
Hmm.
can't
Yeah.
really rely that they're going to be there.
And that's a problem considering, oh, I think
I
I
I don't
don't.
know that
Go
it's
ahead.
more of a problem for anyone other than the people. The worst people it's going to be for is that if you always have to use Google Maps to get wherever you're going, even if it's somewhere you go every day.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's exactly right. Is I think that yeah, I know I have friends like that, you know, been to my house a dozen times and don't know how to get there without it, right? Like that's concerning, right? Um, but I mean, it's also information that we just don't need to store in our heads anymore. And like, but like, what I think about is, you know, say, you're leading a fire team somewhere, and if are you overly reliant on technology to know where you are? Could you still read maps, right? Um, And I mean that's not just military related, just in general. Do you think people can still read maps and know know how to like what gradient
How
lines on a map mean
how
and
often
elevation
do
lines and
police show up to a no-knock raid and go to the wrong door?
mm-hmm.
Is
No,
it a technology problem, or is it a reading map problem, or is it both?
I would assume that's an Intel problem, but hey,
Maybe.
maybe. I think it's also case dependent. I'm not sure. Um, it is an interesting thought exercise to think about our reliance on technology as a society, right? And how do we get around that? But that's really cool. So you guys are looking at going after this piece or going after this program where you can help work on some of those things.
Yes. Yeah, so it's with the Navy, and it's part of a larger set of different SBIRs that are all kind of uh, collating towards, a higher level of being able to do different hypersonic things at a higher level. But, because we don't have a lot of them, at least the ones we do have. I mean, I don't know. You can go do research on what we have, and it's most of it's classified. The cool part about this project and what a lot of projects we're working on is that like I said, they don't want it to be classified. They're pushing towards this, the MOSA, the modular open source type things, so that we kind of like get rid of vendor lock, and it's not just one, it's not just like here's 10 bajillion dollars, pick your prime, like where can we plug and play different smaller companies into uh, where their strengths are.
Yeah. What are the benefits to doing that and the drawbacks? Because I'm sure that there are a lot of plus and minuses on both
How
sides.
philosophical do you want me to be?
As
um,
philosophical as you want to be.
let's go back to World War II, right?
Hmm.
Uh, did only Ford build P-51s? No, like they had Cadillac engines in them, but all these factories stopped doing what they were doing, and then they contributed to the war effort, right?
Hmm.
If only Lockheed Martin can build this one specific thing, is that going to be helpful when we need that one specific thing en masse? It
Okay.
won't be. So if we do this open source type thing, in theory, right? I'm not an expert, by the way. I'm just telling you both my thoughts slash what I've gotten, given to me from our different projects. But right, the theory is then you can grab lots of different capabilities from lots of different places and plug them in, and we can concentrate mass much more quickly.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I think that there's a difference between hardware and software, though, right? Like, you absolutely should have a lot of different vendors and a lot of different factories that can, say, make artillery shells, right? Absolutely. But, when you start thinking about like the ecosystem and the IT environment that DoD has, I understand the need to have addition like multiple vendors in, but does it create uh, like a less secure environment?
Great question. I'm a security expert, but if if AI can help us create the most insanely uh, secure thing, it could probably also help us create the most insanely hackable or capability to hack. I don't know.
Yeah.
It, I, in my thought, yes, but yeah, I don't know. You could centralize the security, but not the rest of the development, right? So you'd be like, you have to follow these rules for security, or we are going to pull it in and then we're going to do the security part, under X, but
Hmm.
you can still do the development as long as you follow these rules. That's kind of, I think, more the path that they're going down.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. Super interesting. As we get ready to wrap up today, gentlemen, any topics that I forgot to bring up, any points you want to make? I didn't give you the opportunity to.
No, I mean, it's been some pretty good conversation. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, again, thanks for the kudos on the promotion. If I talk about Colvin Run for like 5 seconds, but we have talked about a bunch of different projects, but I guess one of the avenues I was going to veer down again was like the agnostic approach we kind of take, right? Which kind of ties into this MOSA thing. So for instance, Josh's project, right? Like if we just build only onto that one specific, commercial service offering, that's great until the Navy's like, we don't want that product. We want Google, right? So Josh has been doing a really good job at that. Um, Building it in such a way that in theory we could just put it on top of Google's version of it if that's what the customer wants. Um, Because if the customer says, hey, it's easier to do ATO with X, yeah, why wouldn't we do that?
Mhm. No, absolutely. Really appreciate it, Bruce. Josh, anything you'd like to add?
No, yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, gentlemen. Appreciate you both hopping on. Wish you and Colvin Run the best of success this year. And to everybody out there, thanks for listening to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I'm your host, Nick Schutt. Have a great day.